Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis show, man. Gosh, you know what? I gotta come up with something different besides saying I'm excited about this. But you know what? Truthfully, every time we get a guest on our show, I get excited about it because I love hearing the stories. I love hearing the whys, and I'm really excited to get into what Jonathan Rivera has been up to and what you're doing. Jr. Man, good to see you. And how you doing today, brother?
I have to say, I'm excited to be on the show, and I
Yeah.
really, really mean it. I've been looking forward to it since we first spoke, and I'm grateful that you guys invited me on, and I hope that we put on a good show for our listeners today.
Well, I want to get into the how did you decide? I mean, because there's there's a gazillion podcasts out there. When did you see a business opportunity in podcast land, and kind of what was that? What were the triggers to that?
So I'm going to date myself here, but
You know, don't worry about that because look over here.
well, I started podcasting in 2008, so it was a little while ago. And I only did it because when I got online, everybody was talking about being a thought leader. And I, at that time, everybody was blogging. And
Mm.
I'm like, I can't write. I'm a straight D student, barely made it out of high school. And you want me to write to be a thought leader? I don't think so. And I discovered on my first MacBook the program on there to record podcasts, and I was like, wow, this is cool. And then I figured out how to connect it and figured out how to make podcasts and have them in iTunes and all that. That was just for myself, for the business I was building. I didn't turn it into a service business until years later, and it was by accident. Just being around the right people at the right time, I realized there was an opportunity, and I was in a mastermind, my first high level mastermind. And at that time, I had a real estate training business where we were training agents how to get listings and referrals and do social media and all this kind of good marketing stuff. And during the breaks at that mastermind, people would pull me aside and say, "Hey, heard you doing a podcast with so and so. How are you doing that? How'd you get connected with that guy? Oh, I heard you on this show." And about 6 months into that year long mastermind, I decided to shutter the doors at the real estate training company and turn it into a podcast agency. And so that was really by being around the right people, realizing that was the opportunity, and talking with my wife about it. I call her Cupcake and say, "Hey, Cupcake, what do you make of this?" And she said the same thing I did. Maybe that's the business.
That's cool because that's the being open to opportunity and willing to take a risk. How risky? I mean, did you like say, all right, I'm running off the dock into the lake, or was it kind of like I'm going to walk out into the pond a little bit and test the water first?
I don't know if I have the test the water gear. It's all or nothing. I'll swim back if I feel like I'm drowning. But it was a matter of when we think about our life's purpose and intention, I think I knew it deep down inside that I wasn't satisfied helping real estate agents. Lots of good people doing good things, putting roofs over people's heads. And yeah, that's great. That's very limited impact. And when I thought about the big picture, what I could be doing in life, and the whole reason that I started podcasting was because I had some mentors who taught me interesting things that helped me out in business and in life. And I thought, if we record these conversations and share them with other people, couldn't we improve their lives as well? And so I realized that I was in this really small little niche where I couldn't make the impact that I wanted to make on the world. And so when it hit us that it should be the podcasting thing, I already started realizing, look, nobody's going to listen to me. Nobody cares about me. But these other people whom I'm helping here, here, and here, they're going to listen to them. So we could be the conduit to these people. And in doing this, we can change lives.
Is that where you is that where you found your success of treating it like you just wanted to have the conversation with the individual instead of coming in with that, grander vision of like, I want to touch lives of, 10 million people with each episode, all that kind of stuff. It sounds like you kind of just came in like, I just want to have a conversation. Was that your approach?
It's so interesting as we're saying that. I'm thinking, wait a second, I've been doing this longer than I thought, because that was it. It was about, and this is where I'm a little contrarian, because when I'm talking to people, in fact, I was on a call just now with a person about starting a podcast, and she was telling me how her coach is telling her she got to get on social media, she got to build up her audience, she's got to build up her email list. And I said, listen, in order for us to have a good conversation, I need to set expectations. And I don't really know anything about an audience. I don't know anything about building a big following. I don't know anything about that. So with me, what I'm going to bring to you is the perspective that the only conversation that matters, the only listener that matters, the only person that will validate your podcast is the person sitting across the mic from you. That's the one that matters. And so I've been doing this for years, and I just didn't realize till we just talked about it, is like, yeah, that's always been the perspective. I have built podcasts with bigger audiences, but I'm better at talking to people, having a conversation, and making that the meaningful part of what I'm doing.
Did you reach a point ever with as the podcast gained success that you had a little bit of an issue sticking to that, maybe staying fully authentic, wanting to sound smarter than you are or whatever? I know I've caught myself doing that before, rather than just sticking in the conversation.
I was lucky, man, because when I started this, I started, like I told you, I started with people who had impacted my life and having conversations with them. And so that never really went away. I just found more people that changed my life. Like I could pull books off of my shelf here from people that I've worked with and done podcasts with. And I've been fortunate in that I've never really had to worry about the audience or any of that stuff, because I was always there for that one person. And that's what makes me a little bit strange.
That's a great point too, because I can't remember who it was we were talking to the other day, Camden. I think it was a guest, but it may have just been somebody I was reading about. You never know; they all blend together now. But was that exact thing of when you hit this tipping point of no, it was Joe Rogan. Now that I think about it, it was Joe Rogan talking about when he went to Spotify and all this sort of stuff, and Spotify said, well, audience and this and this and this, and he said, quite frankly, I mean, exactly what you said. He said, I'm doing this because I enjoy talking to the people on the other side of the microphone. And when you think about that, and then you add in the fact of how do I make an impact, and that impact is even greater when I'm allowed to help somebody else share their story and their how to help others. And that's where it really comes to be, and being your authentic self and doing it. That's what makes it fun. And I'm sure that's what drives you every day to get up and do what you've been doing with podcasting.
I've been working on this, and I'll share it with you guys and see if you can relate. But I have this idea: right word from the right person at the right time can change the trajectory of your life. And I don't know about you guys. I'm old. I listen to like books and tapes in the car, and listen to sales training and personal development and growth. And you never know which one it's going to be. That's just going to say something that you heard 1,000 times. And yet in this moment, you're open to that, and it changes the way you think about everything. And so I've been blessed. I'm a man of God, so I'm going to put that out there. And I remember thinking, well, how can I help? I'm a Knight of Columbus. They're doing Tootsie Roll drives, and they're doing bottle things and all this. And I'm like, that ain't me. I'll give you money, but I can't do that. And I was fortunate, and this happened during COVID when we were all alone and had lots of time to think. I realized this is my ministry. This is my gift. And whether it's me speaking to someone listening, or whether it's me building that path, that bridge from another speaker to an audience, this is my work to help this world be a better place and brings God's light to people.
Yeah, that's great. And what it reminded me of, and I think it's Confucius that said when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And that doesn't necessarily mean that, here's the teacher with the chalkboard. It means when your mind is ready to hear at that moment, whether it's this show that the three of us are on right now, or another show, or something you did 10 years ago that somebody stumbles into and listens to again and goes, bam, that's the thing. And that's what I heard you say. And that's a powerful place and amazing feeling. I want to, how does the enabling others to have podcasts help fuel that? How does that feed into that purpose you have?
I couldn't do it by myself. We're doing this together, and let's just be honest. Not everybody's going to like me, and I don't care, right? That's good. You don't like me, that's fine. I'm okay with that. So that means I can't help that many people, but some of the folks that we have helped are reaching lots of people, impacting lives, improving days, improving families, improving faith. And that's, I don't take credit for any of it, but I get to be a part of it. And so there's no other way for me to do this than to help people that I believe in. And that's why we're pretty selective about who we work with. I want to believe in you. I want to know we have the same values. I want to know we have the same work ethic. And I want to know that you have a mission like mine where we're trying to improve lives. And if I hear all that, I'm your biggest fan. I'm going to help. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to go to work for you, because I know when I build that bridge with you, we are going to change lives. And I don't need any credit. I don't care about credit. All I know is when I die and I go up there, I'm going to have some marks in the good column for the work I'm doing.
Oh, I love that. And you're so right when you're talking about it's like that. Not everyone's going to like you. I think that's one of the things when people think about podcasting and they start comparing it to other, mediums of entertainment, and especially like information, they tend to think like, okay, well, that might not be the smartest guy. It's not the most well-formulated discussion, like all these different things like that. But then they're kind of missing the point of the reason people like podcasts is because they relate to the person talking. And when we're talking about being authentic in your conversation, the reason you have to be authentic when you're hosting a podcast is because the questions that Camden wants to ask right now are the same questions that people listening who like my conversations want to hear, because they're thinking the exact same things. If I'd done all of my homework on every guest, I'm thinking, Dad, to your Joe Rogan example, when he has like the scientist on, if he came in and had, all of these lessons in physics and was asking top level physics, no one would want to freaking listen. But it's coming in as just a normal person being like, hey, so what's this quantum physics crap? Like, what are you talking about there? And it's like that level is what people want out of it. And that's where that authenticity is so important, of just like having that conversation. And I think you're so right when you say, the right word, the right person, the right time. Last time I was up in Colorado, I was hanging out with a couple of old rugby buddies that we played together for 5 years. And I was talking with them about some advice that I got from some of our coaches and how it just sticks with me. And it's blew my mind. Neither of them remembered this conversation. Like, it was a practice. I know they were there. We were playing together. And I remember getting screamed at by our coach, John. And it was something that just stuck in the back of my mind. And it's like something I think about probably at least once a week. And they didn't even hear it. And it's just that it wasn't the right time for them. It wasn't the right person necessarily. I think about professors and teachers in high school even, but the coach type professor. And it's so funny because as the athlete in the room, I always loved those guys. I had a marketing professor here at the U of A who was amazing. Everyone else hated him because he was a coach and he was like, I need you to work hard, and was yelling at people and stuff. But for me, that was the right person. That was the right language. I learned so much more from him. And so I think, to kind of wrap that up, what I mean is that authenticity from the person having the conversation is big, but then you have to carry that authenticity as the listener as well of like, okay, what do I really like about this person? It's not that they're the smartest person. It's that they ask good questions. It's that they're genuine. It's that they're authentic.
I love it, man. And that was actually my role in those first shows. I just partnered up with my mentors. They didn't know how to do the podcast thing. I was like, let me do all the work and then let me represent the audience, because I have all these questions, this curiosity, and let's bring that to our listeners. And that's why we had so much success, is exactly that. I was the representative by proxy for all our listeners out there who were trying to learn.
I want to get into a little bit of the business side. What was that impediment to going from this is kind of a cool thing to making money off of it? I mean, making it into a business, right? I mean, to where your wife's going, I really support what you're doing.
Man,
And
that was a long road.
not that you've ever
I
heard that. I'm sure you've never
Yeah.
heard that.
Three
yeah.
laughs from guys who have heard that from their wives before.
Oh man, there was I didn't even know it was a business, so that was number one. And I said it half jokingly, but I was serious. I was a straight D student, barely made it out of high school. I didn't have any business training, and so I didn't even know what the questions were to ask or what any of this looked like. So I was fumbling around trying to figure it out, and it was trial by error. I remember that I was charging very little in the beginning, and then I was co-hosting. There was one point where I was on 8 times a week, 8 times a week on 8 different shows. So I was co-hosting 8 shows, and I was barely charging any money. And it wasn't until my wife, Cupcake, joined the business that we started looking at it and saying, "Hey, maybe we should charge some more. Maybe we should change some things." But that all happened because we were married for 8 years, decided to have a kid, couldn't after trying vigorously for a couple of years. And we decided to adopt, and that was a whole process. But when the kiddo came home, I thought I was going to stay with him and she was going to go back to her corporate job. And we realized that for bonding and for sanity, it just wasn't going to work that way. So she joined the business, came on board, and she's like, how are you even doing this? You're doing all these shows, you're co-hosting, you're not charging enough. I was essentially paying these people to be their podcast partner. And so there was a lot of humility, a lot of getting outside perspective, hiring coaches to help us repackage and rethink what we were offering. And most importantly, drilling into our head. And this was an interesting one, what value we were actually bringing to people because we were afraid to charge more. And so there was so much growth and so much learning that went into it. But I couldn't have done it without my wife jumping on board. She supported me the whole time. And when she came on board, she was like, hey, we need to make some changes. Why don't we hire these consultants here who happen to be one of our clients who can help us repackage? And we did that. And it was painful and it was hard. And some of the stuff didn't work. But through trial and error and through having that mission of changing lives and it being a family business, now we were in it together. So here we go, ride or die, baby.
Oh, what a great phrase, ride or die, right or die. Damn. Yeah. Need to have a little bit more coffee to lube up the tongue, I guess. Uh, that's a great sense. And, it makes me think of it's so important to have a support network, whether it's your wife, the mastermind that you talked about earlier. That was kind of the catalyst switch that got you into the podcasting, and how much you can rely on that network to support, bounce ideas off of. I always like to say, help. When you get kicked in the Jimmy, help pick you back up off the ground. That's that sort of space. When you started to do that and build the team, because you said it already a couple of times, how did you, who has no idea about business, what was that first thing you grabbed onto of, well, I need help over here or there, and how'd you, because this is one of the things I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs and helped them do. It's like, hey, if you don't like doing that, do that, or have somebody else do that. So how did you come to that solution set?
I think the biggest thing for me, I've been lucky. Okay. I've been lucky. And I don't know if it's a personality thing. I don't know if it's DNA. I don't know if it can be learned or not. But I've been lucky to be able to attract mentors in everything I do. And so when I was a little kid, I remember my parents telling me the story of my Uncle Al was an electrician. And when we would go visit him, I would want to go and do projects with him. When we're there visiting, I'm like, no, I want to go work with Uncle Al. And Uncle Al, he taught me things. And I eventually became an electrician at a high school. And when I did that, I was a good apprentice. And I attracted mentorship through a journeyman who worked with me, taught me how to bend pipe and figure out calculations on wire and all that, because I wanted to learn. I was eager to learn. And if you taught me, I would put it into practice. And that has been going on my entire life. When I went into real estate, I remember a team, Lita Handy Peters. She and this other lady were a team, and they brought me under their wing because they saw that I would learn and I would do, and they wanted to teach me. And I think we're all looking for that as we learn and as we grow and as we get more mature. Just like you're saying, Otis, that you mentor people. Part of that is because you want to help people get better. You've got all this experience, and what are you going to do with it? You want to help people get better. So that's a natural progression at every level you get to. And that's one of the blessings that I've had, is that there's no shortage of people who want to mentor me. So I think in terms of people always come to me wanting to get their name out there. It's not about what you know, it's about who you know. Well, I would argue it's about who knows you and what you can do to help them. And so there's one part of it where you allow them to mentor you and help you, but there's the other part of it where you do work and produce results. So they say, hey, I'm not wasting my time. And so I think the biggest realization for me is always finding that next mentor, keeping that mentor engaged so that I can learn from them, because there's so much I don't know. And there's questions that I don't know how to ask because I don't even have the comprehension of what exists. And so getting in the right room with the right people, learning what the questions are, being humble and not thinking I know all the answers. I don't know anything, and I'm proud of that. And I'm going to continue knowing nothing for the rest of my life so that other people can pour into me, I can learn, and I can also pour into my team, into my family, into whoever I'm mentoring as well. So I think it's about being open, like we talked about, being around the right people, and consistently looking for those opportunities to mentor and to be mentored.
Did that desire to learn come a little bit more difficultly? Because what I'm trying to square is you were talking, being the D student, barely made it out of high school, but then all these other situations, it sounds like you're an amazing, I guess student might not be the right word, mentee might be the right word, but how did you foster that desire to learn without necessarily like the academic side?
Man, I am very I read so much, right? I read so much. I mean, I don't have a bookshelf like you back there, Otis, but I got them scattered around. But I don't think that school was right for me the way it was set up. And if we think in terms of the school system, that school system has been built on creating factory workers. Clearly, I'm not a factory worker. So it didn't jive with me. And then I had this problem when I was young with authority. Can't tell me what to do. And in fact, I'm still like that. I handle it better. Right? I handle it better by being the boss. That's how I handle it better. But yeah, I mean, the school system wasn't set up for me. I just did not fit in that system. And one of the funniest things anybody has ever said to me when I told them about that, and it was on a podcast, they're like, "Man, you were such a rebel." And I'm like, "No, I was a reject." Fortunately, I was a reject, and I rejected everything that they gave me, which when I went out into the world allowed me to be open to other things. And I did 9 years as an electrician, moved my way up by learning, by reading blueprints, by running teams, by building electrical rooms, by having my own van and my own crew, and realizing 9 years into it, like, this is it? This is everything? Is this all there is to life? And that's when I started looking. I started looking at real estate. I started looking at personal development. A friend put me on to a book. Which book was it? It was Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where I realized I was unemployable. And then that started me searching for more and more and more. And so I had the curious mind. I wanted to learn, but I didn't want to learn what they were telling me. I wanted to learn what was going to get me to where I wanted to go. So I think that's the difference.
That's a great thought, and I love that. And matter of fact, I think I might have said this on the last show too. So it's whatever's fresh in your mind always comes back up. I'm just finished reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. Finally, yeah, a little late in life. Wish I would have read it 30 years ago. Camden's already got his homework assignment to read that, and guess what, everybody, you're getting it for Christmas too.
Nice.
But there's so much to be said for that, and that desire to learn, and then understanding how you learn, how you digest that information, what works best for you. How did you mentioned 9 years as an electrician, you kind of hit the pinnacle for you of being an electrician. And then you said, is this all there is? How did that come to be? Because so many people struggle with the day-to-day, the 9 to 5 or whatever you want to call it. And I'll throw this out there because if I remember right, you and I, we all three have the same philosophy of this. It's not work-life balance. It's all life. That is a rejection of what society says it should be. So how did you choose the path? Let's just say that, because I think a lot of people struggle with that. How did you choose it?
The path chose me. So I was doing exactly what my parents told me. Hey, you're out of high school, go get a trade. And then after you get a trade, you always have something to fall back on. So I got my trade. I was an electrician. But, oh man, my mom died unexpectedly. And I very rarely share this. So I'm being, all right. My mom took her own life. Okay. She was depressed. I don't know. And when I went to see her in the hospital, I asked her, Mom, what happened? What's going on? And the last words that she said to me was, oh, work has been so stressful. Just give me a second.
Yeah.
I rejected work then. And it took me 2 years of depression and figuring it out. But I rejected that life, and I wasn't going to let them take my life from me.
That's awesome, man. What a beautiful realization. I hate that it had to be such a terrible moment to have that, but to say I'm not going to allow that to happen to me is a powerful message to do. When you walked out, you made that decision. You struggled for those 2 years, and how did and I go back to this because I've worked with so many people, and their number one thing is, how do I know what to do? How do I know do I start with my right foot or my left foot? Do I go out the front door or the back? That kind of simplicity. And okay, I reject all that, but now what is it that I do? I mean, that's really what I'm driving at, and would love to explore that a little bit, because you led such a great path, and I think there's such a great story there when you made that decision to change.
So we're going to quote Yoda. There is no try, just do. Right, so forget about trying and let's just do. But I'm going to tell you what happened. In the back of my mind, I had the seed planted that real estate was the way out. And part of that came from my mom, because I don't know if you guys ever saw it. This is going to date me, but infomercials, late night infomercials, there used to be one. You can buy real estate, no money down. Carlton Sheets, man. I love that guy. I loved my mom got me the program. And I thought, okay, she's trying to tell me something. And that program sat on a shelf like most programs do for a couple years, because I was doing my thing. And when I realized that I was not cut out for the work life as I knew it, I thought, well, here's an escape hatch. And I don't know if it's right or not, but I'm going to take it, because I know where I am right now is not going to take me to where I want to go. And so I said, all right, let me be smart about this. And it wasn't smart. Let me be smart about this. I'm going to quit my job immediately, go get my real estate license so that I can at least try to sell real estate while I figure out the investment thing. And so quit my job, $500 to my name, asked my dad if I could move back in with him under the guise that I was taking care of him. And he's like, yeah, sure. Come on home, empty house. And $500 to my name, go take the real estate course, get my license, and just go out there and do it. And that's what I'm saying. I didn't know anything. I didn't know marketing. And I found mentorship there, different people, but it was about taking action and doing something, because most people get caught up into thinking about doing. I didn't have that option anymore because my life was gone. Like my soul was gone and I knew I needed a change. So it was a situation where I knew I had to change, and some people were too comfortable or too secure. But if what you're doing today is not lining up with your purpose, and I was 23 at the time, that's a long freaking life of doing something you hate. And so I just couldn't bear that.
What I'm really curious about is how did you, through this rejection of norms, how did you find, like, I guess, the realistic approach to keep moving forward? And what's coming to mind is people, rejecting norms and all that's very, with my generation especially, very common. And I know a lot of people who I would put into this category. I'm not sure the right phrase, but like idealistic rejection, to where it's like, oh, well, that's all BS, so I'm just not gonna work. That's all BS, so I'm just not, like, and it's like this, like, just idealistic way of like, that's wrong, therefore I won't do anything. And what I love with you is that you had this, like, that's wrong, that's not for me, but then you blazed your own path forward. How did you reach that understanding of balancing that rejection with, the realism of life moves on?
I'm going to give my dad credit. My dad, he obviously he was there forever. He's still here right now, and I'm grateful for him. And what I learned from my dad, and I like to say that I have a rich dad, poor dad, because my wife's dad is the rich dad who thinks about how to work with your head. And then my dad, poor dad, he's not poor, but he's like, how do I work with my back? Like, how do I get a shovel and move things? And so no matter how bad we were as kids, no matter the lack of respect we may have had for my father, he showed up, put food on the table, and always worked. And so the one thing that I can say is working's in my DNA. And I can't just sit there and hope for it to happen. I know you actually, if you want to build a pond, you got to dig a hole. I get that, and I've done that. And so, man, doing this mental work's a whole lot easier, I thought, than putting on some gloves and digging a hole. So I'm going to just go do this mental work and figure it out. And so to me, it was never a matter of like the secret. I'm going to sit at the top of the mountain and hope things happen.
Just
I'm going to do what I can.
in, right?
I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to focus on inputs and see what I can make happen. And sometimes you get things that you don't want, and you realize that. And sometimes you get things that you do want. And so it's a matter of putting in the work. It's not just saying, I reject that. Okay, you reject that. Then what do you believe in? That's where they fall short. What do you believe in?
Did you approach that from the sense, and maybe looking back on it now, you'll see that, not necessarily while you're going through it, but of like the work being like the therapy for that? Because I think about, you said digging holes, a lot of manual labor stuff that I've done was therapeutic for me. And I personally, I don't know if I've ever applied that same type of a thought process to, the mental work, like you're putting it. Were you able to treat that work as therapeutic, like you would digging a hole?
This is actually one of the things that I'm teaching my son right now. And what I tell him is, son, focus is a superpower. I mean, the average person is distracted with social media, flicking little red lights. They got the attention span of a goldfish right now. Anybody that can focus for more than 2 seconds has a superpower. And so I never really thought about it back then like that, but I do think about it now. And so when I'm doing work, when I'm doing focused work, I don't need that much time, an hour and a half, whatever it is. But fully focused work, like you're saying, therapeutic, it's therapeutic being present. It's therapeutic being in the moment without distraction. And I think mentally, I would say that meditation helped me a lot with that. And I've exchanged meditation for prayer now. So I pray instead, but having that intentional time focused on the outcome that you want, in my mind, is a superpower. So yeah, I find it therapeutic to go for 30 minutes, an hour, or whatever, go write, go research, go do whatever, because I got a result after that. Like there's something I had that wasn't there before, just like digging that ditch.
Oh man, I love that. And by the way, keep using the ditch analogy because that's my favorite. Is grab a shovel and
Yep.
and to bring it even more real for Camden and I, when we moved to this house when he was still a youngster, I think middle school or whatever, his vision was to build a pond. So we literally dug a pond in the backyard. So
Boom.
your your analogy is couldn't get any more homegrown than with the
Yeah.
two of us about digging holes in the backyard. when uh when did you or have you taken a moment uh in prayer, meditation, or whatever, and kind of stopped and turned back and said, "Holy crap! Look what I've done! Look at this! This is pretty awesome." Have you done that?
So for anybody out there who hasn't read Dan Sullivan's The Gap and the Gain, that's exactly what you're describing. And the way he puts it is that as entrepreneurs, as people who are always chasing things, the things that we're chasing are on the horizon. And as we know, we move towards the horizon, it just keeps moving away from us. And that is how entrepreneurs get burnt out. The cure is by stopping in place, turning around, as you said, looking back and seeing how far you've come. And so that is as simple as having a daily gratitude practice, which I teach my son, which I do in the morning and in the evening. And in prayer, I thank God for the beautiful life that he has given me, for the opportunity I have to talk to you, for the chance that somebody listening to this might make a change today. And so gratitude helps with that part because you realize, oh, wow, I've got all these things to be grateful for. And like you said, you got to look back, see where you came from. So journaling is a part of my life. I actually have my last 3 years in journals at my office, and I can go back and say, what was going on at this time? Let me pull this down and see what I was thinking. Oh my gosh, wow, that's interesting how different my thinking is. Or why did I stop doing that? That was working. And so reflecting and being grateful, I think, are powerful allies on your road to your purpose.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. And I'm going to guess, just so our listeners know, to reconfirm that when you talk journaling, you're talking about pen and paper, pencil and paper, not typing.
Dude, I had this conversation the other day with my wife's cousin, who's a big executive at a car company, GM or something like that. And he said the weirdest thing to me. He said, who writes anymore? Ooh,
Oh,
yeah, I have a pen and paper. Not only that, but I do journal in a book with an ink pen, which I love. I bought a special ink pen and I got this journal I use. But not only that, I've got an iPad here, and my iPad is basically electronic note taking because all I do is write on this thing. And so I have a connection to paper and pen.
yeah. And, you know, I haven't done the medical research, but I can tell you from personal experience and from client experience that the physical act of the thought coming out of your head down to your fingers, controlling the pen that puts a shape on a page that represents a letter connected to some other letters that create a word, that create a thought, is a powerful place to be. And it's so much different than the clickety clickety click of the keyboard. It's really powerful.
I want to add something on that because I do remember actually having a professor talk about this in the behavioral economics class because he had the rule of like you couldn't type out your notes, but if you had a screen, you could write on it. And one of the studies that came out around this time actually was that the writing on the screen was slightly lower in test score averages than writing and writing, pen and paper. But you're totally right, Dad, of like what the mechanism is there. And because this is a little bit more theory than you could actually pull from the study. But the idea that we talked about in that class was that because writing makes you like slow down and write out each letter rather than like typing 100 words per minute, you actually have to think through it, and so therefore it gets committed to memory rather than people who could type at a crazy high rate but they won't remember anything because it's typing doesn't have that same connection to where you have to think about the word. You're thinking about where the keys are and all that kind of stuff rather than the actual word that you're writing.
I love it. I'll take it one step further. Sometimes it freaks people out when I'm at a mastermind. I will open up my app and I draw pictures. So I just start drawing pictures of what they're saying, like eyeballs. Oh, we need to build our audience. We need to get more eyes. I'll be drawing an eyeball. I draw weird stuff and then I color it. And it's like the most beautiful notes you've ever seen. And for me, that imprints it. Meanwhile, my wife, Cupcake, she likes to type. She doesn't remember anything.
I love the pictures there because that's, to me, it's such a fundamental thing of like recognizing like what works for you. Like I'll have this all the time, with Tribe and Purpose with our team, with you, Dad, and then with Norman, to where it's like there are words that mean things to me that don't mean anything to you or anything to Norman, but it's like that's the word that means insert business thing here, and it's like, so in my notes that's all it is, and I'll say, hey, so we need to here's one that I know I've used that you've pushed back on before, canvas, and you're like, well, what the hell is canvassing? I'm like, yeah, it's talking to people. Like, I could have wrote it out talking to people. I could have told you go talk to people, ask them about the idea, but canvas is the word. And I think there's something really, really smart about using that type of language and like recognizing yourself. Like, kind of like we were talking about the authenticity around the podcast earlier, how you have to, ask questions like you would yourself in order to get a good interview out of somebody. I think if you want to get the most out of your note taking and those type of things, you got to write it the same way, to where it's like you're using your same shorthand, you're using all of your kind of language. Because if you write your notes for somebody else, if you're drawing pictures, JR, and you're like, oh gosh, well, is Camden going to understand what this picture is? Well, then it's not going to mean anything for you anymore. So you have to have that layer of authenticity and, a little bit of honest self-reflection of, well, what do I get out of these notes?
Yeah, the notes are for me. I mean, here's a quick like money, happy face, calendar. It's just dumb stuff. But when I look at it, I can remember the whole class and the whole day when I just go through this. And so the notes aren't for you, they're for me. And if I have them, I can explain them better to you if I need to.
I love it.
That is awesome. Yeah. Industry experts, one of the things I always love is get that what's going on next in the podcasting world, or what is the next thing from podcasting or whatever. Just kind of put your future projection hat on and just tell us what do you think is going to happen next?
So there's a couple things. I think that we're blessed right now because I told you I started podcasting in 2008, and the process to download a podcast was quite cumbersome. And so it wasn't for everybody. And today you get in your car and your phone automatically connects to your radio, and you'd say, hey, radio, play the Cam and Otis show. Mm. And it does it. Right. We are blessed. And the future is more of that because we're living in a society, like it or not, people want their own custom everything. Everything's got to be custom to me. And their listening experience is high on that priority list of what's custom to them. They get to choose us. They get to choose to listen to us or not to listen to us, depending on, how we started the conversation. But I think the one thing that we can all look forward to is the fact that listenership is going to increase. It's going to be easier. We're going to have more access. And so with that comes more competition. Mm. So there's going to be way more competition. When I started, there wasn't as many podcasts as there are now. So there's that level of competition. And so the way to stand out is to figure out what your lane is. And for us at the Podcast Factory, we're in our third iteration now of what podcasting means to the people whom we serve. And so it started out where the only thing that mattered was ratings, reviews, and rankings in iTunes. And we used to have a slogan, get on top of the charts, baby. We had a system to do it. And that's what mattered back then. As we hired those consultants that I told you about and we repackaged, it was podcasting, and we call it direct response podcasting, podcasting to eliminate objections for your sales team. And that's what we designed an entire system around that. Today, we're at our latest iteration, which we call the client cartels, and it's more true to my soul. It's the fact that conversations equal opportunities. So for us now, it's about loading our hosts with guests who make perfect clients for them and putting them in a situation, a nice open situation where they get to talk, they get to chat, they get to build rapport, and they get to uncover opportunity of business. And so for our clients, where we're moving with the Podcast Factory is more true to my soul, as in direct responses by numbers. So you get this many calls, you get this many opportunities, and that equals that many sales. I finally figured out how to do that in the system that we're on right now. So that's what we're doing. I can't say in general what everybody else is doing. I can only compare to our history.
Oh, that's a great insight, and I love the client cartels idea. Is there more room for more podcasts?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, people may like you and not like me, so they're not listening to this episode, and vice versa. And so the podcast comes down to a couple things, and even people who want to build an audience, that tell them the same thing is your audience is your audience. And so you have to go out and market that to your database. You have to market that to your social. You have to get that to the people that know you and help them get the word out to more people that know you. So yeah, you can take your little slice of the pie. I mean, how many pizza joints are out there? You're going to ask me if there's room for another pizza joint? No, it's the one that's closest to you, the one that delivers, the one that has special white pizza. I don't know. There's plenty of room out there, and it's just a matter of how you establish yourself and who you go to market after.
Yeah, it makes me think a lot of, the other sections of the entertainment industry, with TV shows and streaming and all that kind of stuff now, to where, there is a little bit of the lack of, except for, some major sporting events like the Super Bowl and that kind of stuff. And maybe the Oscars are another thing, but it's like, there's not really this like wide appeal show anymore. I know that actually 2 nights ago, the new Game of Thrones show came out and it had crazy huge numbers. So maybe that'll be the wide appeal show. But it's kind of like you're talking about with the podcast. If it's not about hitting everybody, having this huge audience, it's about that small group. We could think about all these different shows and stuff. Dad, you and I, we're rugby people. There's rugby on TV now, and we will pay for the services that have rugby. That's our niche, and we'll always lock in on that. And I think that's kind of the same type of thing that you see with podcasting, is that there are going to be people who try to have this broad reach. But when it really comes down to it, it's what's this small group? What do these type of people want to hear? What do you want to hear? And that's where those niches are going to come from. We've mentioned Joe Rogan earlier, thinking about him. I've watched Joe Rogan probably like 1 episode a week or so. He puts out so much freaking content. I don't watch most of that. I'm not interested in every comedian that he has on, watching them BS and drink whiskey for 3 hours. No, but it's like, hey, there's some UFO guy on there. It's like, all right, that's interesting enough. I'm going to go in. Like, it's like you have those little, market segments inside of all of that. And I think that's, you're totally right, JR. That's exactly where it's going to be going. And I think looking to the other streaming services and those type of things is kind of indicative of what podcasts will look like.
We're just getting started, baby.
Man, yeah, I'm rolling in my head what I learned, and it's tough because, man, you've had some great thoughts from that changing your focus to focus is a superpower, and I think that's the one I'm grabbing onto that one because I love that, and that what a great lesson for people to think about. To be able to focus, to be able to shut down and do something. And I'll be honest, I hadn't read Tim Ferriss's book that everybody talks about, 4-Hour Work Week, but everything I've heard about it is really just that. It's not you're only working 4 hours a week. It is being able to focus And when you can focus, because I've done that for many, many years in various aspects of my life and other aspects, I probably ought to bring some more focus in. But I've knocked out things and gotten it done. And people looked at me and gone, "You done with that already?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, here, that's got it done." Well, as opposed to, the other folks who try to do it all at once and don't focus. So focus is a superpower. And I'll take that up from one level from what I learned to that's the foot stomper. I'll call that the foot stomper, what I learned for today. Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
JR, you said this when we were talking about what I called idealistic rejection, which I'm still not sure about that term. But that you said, you rejected it. Well, then what? What do you believe in? If you don't believe in that, what do you believe in? And I think that is such an important thing as people, the rejection of things is good. It's natural because it's like, that's how you make change. That's how you make progress. That's how we as a society move forward. But you have to have that belief to move on next. Just rejected doesn't do any good. Then you're just, being a negative Nancy, and nobody wants to be around that. Instead, take some action and go change it yourself.
Well, my lesson is you guys sure know how to make a fella feel good. I enjoyed it, guys. I'm so grateful, man. You guys are so good. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for letting me open up, and thank you for the opportunity to just rap and share. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Oh, we appreciate you too. How can folks follow up with you, follow you, find your show, the shows that you sponsor, the shows that you do, all that sort of stuff? What's the best way?
Since we are all podcast listeners here, I would say that my show, resultsleader.fm, resultsleader.fm is where I am doing interviews and speaking to men and women who are getting results for their clients. That would be the place to go. And if you care to look up my company, it is thepodcastfactory.com. The Podcast Factory. Even though I said the school system's teaching me to be a factory worker, I still name my company a factory.
Yeah. Couldn't get rid of it, man. It was like a stuck in your finger. JR, man, this has been a lot of fun and just great resource of information, man. I really appreciate your time here today.
Thank you, guys.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to the Cam and Otis Show, and a special thanks to our guest, JR, for joining us today. And of course, our sponsor, Tribe and Purpose. Find your tribe, find your purpose. Get started for free today at findyourpurpose.coach. Make sure to follow the Cam and Otis Show on Instagram and Facebook, and please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Videos of the podcast are on our YouTube page, and you can always get a full archive of our episodes at thecamandotisshow.buzzsprout.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.